Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, guys. Today we're going to talk about Hadith rejection and Hadith absolutism, and how do you tread the line between these two. And maybe you hold on to Hadith relativism, which I find myself much more inclined to now. Hadith relativism. Now I'll show you, see, there's this extreme of Hadith absolutism where you just accept everything. I will explain to you deeper on what is the whole principle behind this. And Hadith rejection, where you just reject everything, you don't even care. That's the other extreme. Now, Hadith relativism, on the other hand, is you reject some based on some principles. Okay, so you have some principles which you used to reject, and so this is the difference between the two. You can reject, but you don't reject everything. Okay, and now, so let's talk about what is it all about. Hadith absolutism is where some people call it Hadith dogmatism, where you just accept any Hadith. Okay, as long as it has isnad. Okay, remember this. If the isnad is correct, isnad is like the chain of narration, and then you just, once you have checked the isnad and the isnad is correct, you accept it. It doesn't matter if the isnad is correct, it's sahih. Okay, that's one frame of it. You check the chain. So is it the chain that is important? Remember that video I wanted to make about, is it the chain that is important or the meaning? It depends on what you choose. Do you choose the chain or the meaning? Or do you choose both? Now, let me tell you, by the way, everyone is a rejecter. Everyone has rejected some hadith. No matter who, Imam Bukhari, all of them, they have rejected some hadith on some particular basis. Okay, so it just depends on how much are you going to reject. How much are you going to reject? On what basis are you going to reject any hadith even? No matter what. See, it's a very, very complicated issue, and some people miss this. Okay, now what you see. Take for instance Imam Bukhari's book, Sahih Bukhari. That book was written on a particular principle, and any hadith that doesn't meet those principles will be rejected. It's simple as that. Any hadith that doesn't meet those principles will not enter the book. Now, every other hadith book that you know, Sunan at-Tirmidhi and all those people, all those other hadith collections, they also have principle. Everyone has principle of if it doesn't meet this criteria, then we reject it. Now, I was telling you about isnad. Isnad is just chain of narration. If we find in a chain where one scholar linked to another scholar, and it goes back to the Prophet ﷺ, if we check all those scholars or individuals, all those individuals, if we check them and they are authentic and they are trustworthy and everything, then we accept the hadith. And this is where you find most of the scholars that want to go on this route. Okay, most of the scholars, like Imams, all those famous Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad, all of them, some people even call them in some papers like the Ahlul Hadith, or those that are following the Hadith project. Okay, now, that is Hadith absolutism. Even though it's not entirely absolutist, they reject some, but very little. Now, on the other hand is Hadith rejection. You see a lot of people now, they say Quran only. We reject any hadith. Okay, they don't want anything to do with hadith because they see it as fabrication and it's unnecessary, and we have the Quran, and why should you have hadith when you already have the Quran, right? That is the argument. Okay, that's the other end. They reject the hadith. Now, the middle ground, and by the way, it's not like a middle ground, it's like a spectrum. You either tend towards one end or the other end. It's not like a perfect point. So some people will reject a lot, some people will not reject as much. They will just reject some. Now, let's talk about some principles of rejection. What are some principles that some people used to reject? For example, you have people in the Islamic history, there were some people that cared more about the content of the hadith. They don't really care about the isnad, or that's how they have been portrayed. They don't care about the isnad. They care about the matan, the meaning. So it depends on, to me, this is where we can use to know who you are. Do you care about the isnad or do you care about the meaning? If you only care about the isnad, okay, it doesn't even matter what it says. You will just accept it. So this is the argument that the other guys are making, that, see, give me good isnad. If the meaning is wrong, I will still not accept it. Okay? Because they cared more about the meaning. It's not about some chain. If the chain is good, it's just a list of names. If the matan, the content is wrong, I will not accept it. Now, how would they know if the content is wrong? They now have some principles. For example, there's a scholar called Khatib al-Baghdadi, and even Daraqutni, and even some Maliki scholars, jurists like Qadi Iyad and other people. They said, see, if the isnad is good and the content is wrong, we throw it against the wall. Okay, so they don't accept isnad just like that. The meaning has to be compatible with, for example, the Quran. So this is one of their principles. If it contradicts the Quran, they will not accept it. See, and by the way, they have a principle. It's not necessary that they apply it to the fullest. Okay, see, but the principle is there. They listed their principle, especially Khatib al-Baghdadi. He listed his principles of rejecting hadith. That if the hadith doesn't meet this criteria, then we will not accept it. So if it contradicts the Quran, okay, if it contradicts logic or reason, something that is clearly logical, and it contradicts that, if it contradicts an already established principle in Islam, and there are many principles like this that they use to check the content of the hadith, not necessarily only the isnad. Okay, so this is to show you the different spectrum. Some people, if you give them isnad, it's sufficient for them. The meaning, we just have to follow it. And a lot of things is also happening, by the way. Let's say the isnad is good, and the content, it seems problematic. That's what they will call it. It's problematic. So they will try to reconcile it. They will try to explain it in a way that will not be contradictory. That's also the task of some people, because there are some hadiths that are really problematic. For example, I was reading a paper about Jonathan Brown. By the way, if you want to really go into this stuff, read the works of Jonathan Brown. So he was saying that, see, even those guys that claim that they were doing isnad only, okay, they also did content criticism, method criticism. It's not just as much as the other guys. Okay, so for example, Imam Bukhari, he rejected one hadith that talks about that the world is going to end after 200 years or something like this. So Imam Bukhari came after 200 years and he's like, okay, this hadith now, he's saying the world will end after 200 years. Why am I still here? Something like that. Okay, so it's showing that the hadith has already contradicted something historical. It doesn't make any sense for you to say something like this. Even if the isnad is good, saying that the world will end 200 years and we are in the 4th century. Did you see? So that hadith, for example, it doesn't matter, the isnad is wrong. Now, some people can come and say, you know what, it doesn't mean the world will end like that. It means that the scholars are dead or something. You can allegorize it, you can explain it out however you want. But some people just plain out reject it. So now, I've shown you is that this absolutism, where people just, and by the way, they will just accept it because of the isnad. Then there's there's hadith rejection, that people, they don't even care about hadith. Then there's relativism, where people are trading between, they're having some kind of principles to filter out those hadiths that will not meet those criteria. So that is the part that I'm much more inclined to. I'm not going to accept something just because there's the isnad is there. See, by the way, this is a very interesting thing. Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi, all those guys, all those scholars, they were part of the whole hadith project. They were the ones saying, we'll accept the hadith if the isnad is good. But you have people like Imam Malik. Some people will see Imam Malik as people of the hadith, because but still Imam Malik didn't accept just everything. For example, he has a principle in his own fiqh, his own jurisprudence, that if the hadith contradict, for example, if you have one narration, they call it khabar hadith or ahad hadith that is not mutawatir, for example, that hadith comes and is contradicting what the people of Medina are doing, or what they have, the tradition of the people of Medina, it's not going to accept it. That's the principle of accepting hadith. He has a principle too. So you cannot call him an absolutist, because there are some hadiths he didn't accept also, Imam Malik. Okay, so this shows you that it's not like it's a spectrum. It's not like a fixed thing, and it depends on what principle are you using. To me, I'm much more like the principle of Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi. That principle, I like it. See, even him, we might not even use it to the extent that it should be used, but if we find something problematic that is causing a lot of people to leave Islam or something like this, why don't we just use that principle? If it's something, we can check the hadith and be like, it doesn't matter the isnad. To me, I care more about the content than the isnad. I care more about the content than the isnad. Okay, if the content is problematic, then you don't need to accept it. Okay, if the content is problematic, it could be false. And by the way, let me just throw something in before we end. Also, I was reading this paper about Jonathan Brown, about Imam Shafi and the rationalists. You see, the people that are relativists, they call them the rationalists. You see, these so-called rationalists, they had the principle of saying, see, how can we even be sure that the Prophet ﷺ said these things? How can we be sure? And they said they will not accept anything that they cannot swear to Allah that the Prophet said it, or the Prophet will accept it even. So why would you, just because of the Isnad, it doesn't mean the Prophet said it. So just because it's Sahih, it doesn't mean that the Prophet literally said it. Because if the, what's it called? It doesn't actually. It just means that according to what we see, we trust it. And that's exactly the position of Imam Shafi, that is, we trust it enough. It doesn't mean we can 100% say that the Prophet said it. No doubt about it. We have enough evidence to believe it. That's what it's just like a justifiable belief. Okay, we are justified to believe the Prophet said it, something like this. Now, another thing to put in, it's very deep topic, guys. I'm serious. I've been reading a lot about this. Another issue is about, see, those guys that want to take the absolutist view, they ended up going as far. See, you think only Sahih Hadith will fall into this? Anything that is attributed to the Prophet can be accepted. They will just say, see, as long as it is attributed to the Prophet, there's a possibility he could say it. It's possible that he said it, even though the chain is weak. So they will say, see, you think this not has to be 100% correct every time? No. Even if the chain is problematic, as long as it is attributed to the Prophet, we can still, it's possible that he said it. Is it not possible? What if one hadith says that be good to your mother, that the Prophet said be good to your mother, or something like this? It's not, the matter is not problematic. So yeah, the Prophet could have said that. He could have said it, you see. So in a way, anything can be attributed to the Prophet. And so the whole point is this, guys. The whole point is this. I think the way to go, okay, is not to go to the extreme of rejecting the hadith. Neither is it to go to the absolutist view of just accepting anything as long as the isnad is correct. Bro, I don't care if the isnad is correct. If the meaning is contradictory to a principle in the Quran, I don't care about how some people in the past have interpreted something. If the meaning, if they couldn't see it that time, we can see it now. And we are the one trying to hold on to our faith here. Some people will be like, we just follow them, we follow the tradition. Of course not. If we today can see something that is clearly seen by us, and we just throw away our own perspective and throw away our own reason, be like, we just follow. No. We have to have our own principles and apply our own principle, just like they did. By the way, okay, is all those books that Imam Shafi and Imam Ahmad and all those people they were writing, okay, why didn't they just follow some traditions? Why did they have to write a book? You see, why did they have to have principles that are not identical? Imam Malik's principle is not the same as Imam Ahmad or Imam Shafi. If they were the same, they would not be 4 different schools or even more. So it seems to be like in the past, people were thinking, scholars were coming up with principles and schools of thought. They were active in learning. They were active in proposing new ideas. And today we just seem to have died and just be following whatever. We don't even have, which scholar is trying to form a new school now? Who is that scholar? I don't know. Everyone's just following, hey, I'm Maliki. Why should that be the case? Why can't you discover your own school using reason? Okay, so I think this is way in the future. Maybe some people will be watching this in the future. Remember this spectrum that I've laid out for you. I think you are going to have a lot of problem if you just want to follow everything in the hadith. You are going to have problem as long as you are just using isnad and you're not doing content criticism. And by the way, in that paper also, Dr. Jonathan Brown, it showed that even those guys that were using isnad only, they were also doing content criticism with it. Okay, so anyway, the matan is what matters to me. The matan is the meaning and the content of the hadith is problematic, given those principles that we have laid out. For example, the Quran, if it contradicts the Quran, if the Quran says something and one hadith comes with good Sahih hadith and it contradicts the Quran, we reject it. If it attributes, one of the principles of, I think, Qadi Iyad, it says that, see, if this hadith comes and is attributing some kind of defect to the Prophet ﷺ, we don't accept it. If he attributes some, you remember this satanic verses stuff? They rejected it on this principle. Now, the satanic verses, is it not causing trouble now? Is it not causing problem for the people? You see, those kind of satanic verses and stuff like this, we don't need it. Why should I believe the Prophet, something like that happened? What's my business with that? I don't need the satanic verses to be Muslim, to believe that it happened, this occurrence happened, historical something. I don't care. I want to be a Muslim, like pray for Allah and everything, not to believe like there's some kind of satanic verses, something that happened. You see that kind of thing now. And thank God there were scholars in the past that rejected this. Alhamdulillah, we have people like that were thinking forward and be like, you know what, we don't need this stuff. And it's attributing like the devil, shaitan is saying, is whispering to the people, all those kind of stuff. Just because of Isnad, you just accept it like that. We say no, we reject it, and we align with those scholars that are trying to be rational and trying to make everything make sense, not just dogmatically accepting stuff. So I know this seems like I'm angry, because I am. See, some people of us, we are out here trying to hold on to our faith, trying to be as rational as possible in the age of skepticism and agnosticism and atheism all over the place. And then you just keep adding more problems for us and this is not even like the foundation of the faith. Is Allah going to ask you, did you believe in the satanic verses? Or is he going to ask you about your salah and all these other things? But because once you already lay down the principle that you accept everything no matter what, you just go down that slippery slope and just be accepting everything. So I think you need to step back and focus on the reason that God has given us. We use our reason to analyze things to the best of our abilities, okay? And if there's something that's going to affect us, affect our deen, affect our faith, things like this as the satanic verses and all this, anything similar, that some people just accept it because it was said, we don't accept it, okay? So I hope let me see what you guys think. I know some of you will be angry with this, whatever. I'm just telling you my view, okay? See you guys later. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.